All right. So, man, oh man, are you in for a treat? Man, it was so good that I had to do a part two. The answer is yes. I had the luxury of spending time with my friend Ty Cohen. You know, we got so deep in the roots inside of discipline on part one of this series. So if you're listening here on part two, I'm going to press upon you to please go back and listen to one, because you talk about doing the damn thing. You don't get to $1 million by accident. You don't create a life you love by accident. You don't just wake up and then magic, it's there. No, it requires discipline. It requires desire, want, and focus. So in this kind of second half, part two of my time with Ty Cohen, which I'm going to bring him on in a moment, I just got to get right down to dollars and cents. So if you took out your pad before, take out 2 pads now and 2 pens, just in case the first one runs out. And I want you to be ready. Ty! Yes! So, you know, I don't even want to, I wanted to introduce you and say all these things, but I'm like, every time I hear you say, I kind of just hold my head. So think about this statement. Making money is easy. We just make it hard. Okay? That's a statement that I sit inside of all the time. And every time I think about who you are as the CEO of Kindle Cashflow and all of the neat things you do, and I want to say hundreds of thousands of dollars later, millions of dollars later, it's like, the question is how and where do we start? Who is Ty Cohen?
Yeah. So if you look at me at my core, I am a husband, a dad, actually our anniversary is coming up this Saturday. So a dad of 4 very cool kids that keep me on my toes, 2 boys, 2 girls. I would say serial entrepreneur, but I don't like the word serial. I like to use the word long-term entrepreneur that gets into different things, right? And that gets there long-term. When I think of serial entrepreneur, it reminds me of someone that in some cases could be jumping around from thing to thing to thing. And I have this thing where when I get into something, I like to stick with it. Yeah. Right. So I stick with it. So in a nutshell, that is me. You know, I'm the person that loves writing copy, that loves marketing, that loves personal development, that loves talking about business in non-traditional ways with just good people. That is me right there in a nutshell. And I'm the guy that loves green curry. So right after this interview, I'm going to go get me some green curry as well.
Green curry. You're hilarious. All right. So yes, and now I'm thinking about that damn Thai restaurant. Thank you. So let me jump right into this. Give me an idea for the moment where you said, damn it, I need to do the damn thing. I'm not making enough money. Life is controlling me. I need to control it because that's really it, right? We have a decision to make. Yep. We're either sitting in the passenger seat of the whole life game or we're sitting in the driver's seat. So there's a moment where you look up and you're like, I can't anymore.
Yeah. So it started with desire, right? So here's the thing. I grew up in a really poor, crime-ridden neighborhood, and it was the normal. Right? It was the normal. I was born with something called sickle cell anemia, which is a blood disorder that affects primarily African-Americans and people from African-American descent, but others as well. Some Italians, right? Sicilians. We had a lot of Caribbeans that it affects. So, and it's something that is titled a chronic disease. So there have been tons of people that have passed as a result of having sickle cell anemia. I lost my older sister, Gwen, when she was 27. I think I was about 16 or 17 at that time. So that was my beginning. Having sickle cell anemia, right? Growing up in this area where you saw nothing but crime and poverty and destruction, and thinking that was the normal. Like, what? Everyone has this. You mean you don't go to a funeral every couple of weeks or every couple of months because you know someone that you're friends with that has passed, right? Or you don't have a friend that just went to jail for the next 20 or 30 years. So that was my normal, right? But also add to that, having sickle cell anemia, being this kid that was hospitalized, man, well over 100 times before I was 20, right? Spending weeks in the hospital, learning how to deal with the painful crises that come with sickle cell anemia. I had to learn how to walk at one time all over again, learn how to use my right arm all over again at one time, and top that with being in the hospital at Young New Haven Hospital one time and being 12 years old and hearing your mom and your doctor, your hematologist right outside of your door say, Mrs. Cohen, you shouldn't expect your son Ty to live past the age of 17 because this disease is going to kill him, right? So that being your reality. And then getting to a point where you get 17 and your sister who has the same disease dies at 27 from it, right? So now that becoming your reality. The thing that changed for me, and that was a pivotal point for me, was I had one job in my life. And I got this job when I was 14, and I was working at Walgreens Pharmacy. I got it as part of a summer program. My mom kind of forced me to go in and get the job. No, I actually wanted to get the job because I wanted some independence financially. She forced me to keep the job because after being there for about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm like, I hate this stupid job. I want to quit this thing. And she's like, no, you got to stay there. So she had that, right? At 14, right? So at that time, you could get a summer job at 14. And no, it was just working the summer, right? Yeah. It was just working the summer. But when I turned of age, they called me back to work part-time permanently because, I put in work, I put in the hustle, right? But so the story leads into this. I ended up developing a relationship with my boss at the time. His name is Vinny Cito. And it's an Italian guy who lived in 2 towns over. He lived in Fairfield, Connecticut. We lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And if you know anything about Connecticut, it's not just farms and cows, right?
Did you know that my sister was born in Bridgeport?
No, I didn't know that. That's insane.
My sister,
not at all.
My parents lived there for quite some time. I don't think I ever told you that.
No, not at all. That's interesting. All right. So Bridgeport is night and Fairfield is day. Fairfield, there's a lot of wealth there. It's right on the border of Greenwich. You have a lot of stars like, Hulk Hogan had a home there. I think Diana Ross. You had Regis Philbin, who just recently passed from the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So my boss gets married, right? And he invites me to the wedding. And before the wedding, we go to his house in Fairfield, and he lived in this incredible house. What I thought was incredible at the time, right? Remember, a kid who's living in the ghetto, and I'm saying this different environment. And I'm like, holy cow, are you serious? And I knew that there wasn't much difference between me and him, right? He was a few years older than me. He was in his late 20s. I was in my teens at that time. It's probably about 17 now. But I went back home thinking, how do I change the situation for myself and my mom, right?
There. So you were like, how do I get there?
How do I get there? And at this time, I had been working for Walgreens for maybe about 4 years now. And I knew it wasn't going to be working for someone else. Mm-hmm. I knew that the difference between having the finances to go from living in this area where we lived at to living in something that was a few steps above that was not going to come from me just working at Walgreens Pharmacy. Not at the rate that I wanted to do it, right? I didn't want to wait 10 years. I didn't want to wait 20 years. I knew that entrepreneurship was the only way. Now, at the time, the only entrepreneurs that I knew were the illegal type of entrepreneurs, right? What? And
listen, that was me too. I didn't know anybody who was doing something above the table.
Yeah, right. So, now that was not the route for me. I just pride.
Example. There was no example. You didn't really know. Do I go left or do I go right? How do you actually?
Do it? Yeah. And I couldn't. I had such a great relationship with my mom and my dad. They both have passed since. That I could not see myself going the illegal route for too long because I did try it out. And then getting in trouble and having my parents deal with that. Mm-hmm. So just doing it legally was the only option that I had. So now the problem with that is I didn't have anyone around me, just like you said, right? So I had to figure it out. There was no YouTube, there was no podcast, there was no individuals that I knew of that I could go to, events, seminars, training sessions. So I would just, go down to after work sometimes and after school, so it would vary, I would take the bus down to the library and kind of learn whatever it is I could about entrepreneurship. Now, at the time, I didn't even know that it was called entrepreneurship. I didn't even know that owning your own business was called being an entrepreneur. I studied marketing. So I went in and I would devour books by guys like Gary Benzabenga, Gary Halbert, John Carlton, and all of these guys that were great copywriters and salespeople, because I thought that that's what you needed to know in order to create and grow and attract people to your business. Right. And I ended up falling in love with that, the psychology, the persuasion behind that. And we talked about how I would be at the library, right? In part one, if you guys missed out on part one, we talked about going to the library and having this need to get on the computer so that I can do a little bit more research, and only having these 20-minute increments before the timer would run out and it's someone else's turn. So that was my story. That's my start right there. Like, that's how I got involved with entrepreneurship and getting a taste of it, right? It started with seeing someone else living at a better rate than I was living and having the desire to get there, not understanding how I would do it, but just knowing the direction that would get me there and then figuring the rest of it out. And that's it.
So it's like lesson number one, for someone who's taking notes, it's like, for sure, the how almost becomes irrelevant. First step is that you have to figure out, you have to be clear on what you want. And I can still see you standing there like, I don't even know how the hell you got this. I don't even understand it, but I know somehow you did. And if you did, I can too. But at that point, I'm pretty sure you made a decision for yourself. I'm going to figure this out.
Yes, absolutely. I got tired of it. Listen, there was a time in my life where, I was on check systems. Right, you write and if anyone doesn't know what check systems is, that's when you default on your bank account by writing too many checks that you get put on a placement. Right, you're now not able to open bank accounts because you screwed things up so many times. You've got NSF fees up the wazoo.
But listen, you just gave like the politically correct version of that. You know what? I don't know if I should let that go. Because I was in that system too. Or, you know what? I so happen to have gotten onto that system. Yeah. I so happen to. But it's very real. It's a very real thing. Because all of a sudden, so you might, for you who's listening, it might be something else. It might be not check systems. But regardless of what, I can see we have blocks around us. And we're like, I want to get this, but man, I got this wall. This thing's happening. My credit is not just bad. My credit is zero, right? Like it's forever land. I have banks that don't will never touch me. But more importantly, like I have no credibility anywhere. I have no one to show me. I don't have a friend or a buddy who can pull me up. But
who can loan me money?
Or who could loan me money. Money.
So hey, take this 10K or this 5K to start your business.
Listen, let me tell you something. You say things like that and I almost get pissed off because, those things were so far, but it doesn't change the fact that you made a decision. So for the person who's listening, I want to make it clear, regardless of where you are, where you think you are, it literally starts with decision, a firm decision. Because it's like before you start doing the damn thing, you actually have to decide you're going to do the damn thing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like he could have left there and said, well, I have to have this in place and this in place and this in place before I could get it. But what happens is that you put these pieces in place and you just put roadblocks. Yeah. And the possibility becomes insurmountable. And then the likelihood of you actually moving is like next to none, which is why I said, I love the fact that you said, I'm just going to figure it out because the how is irrelevant. You just have to figure out what you want first. So what did you do next? Like, what was your next move from there? Did you start?
So the next move I was like, lucky bastard. I got to get over here. Right? So I started hating on him a little bit, but not too much. In all seriousness, I kind of started figuring this stuff out. At the time, I was a huge fan of comic books because and thanks to my mom, when I would go into the hospital, she knew that in order to help me deal with the pain, reading would be a coping mechanism for me. So she would bring me like these stacks of comic books, 7, 8, 9, 10 at a time, so I can just read and kind of get my mind off of the pain. And that got me into reading. right? That helped me to develop this love for reading. And what I noticed is at the end of each comic book, there would be these ads, right? So there would be these advertisements. And that's what kind of led me in the direction of marketing and wanting to understand more about marketing and understand what would get someone to, out of 12 different ads that are placed in the back of a comic book, what would get someone to be persuaded enough to buy from ad number 2 or ad number 7, right? So I really developed that love for that. And again, I thought that I was the weirdest person ever because, I didn't have anyone else to talk about this stuff with. I didn't have anyone to talk about copywriting or marketing or even starting a business. I remember after first starting one of my businesses where I sold toys, right? I had a toy business and I would keep them in the closet my mom's house. And I remember my cousin Rara, he came by and he accidentally opened the closet and he saw all of these toys and it was like G.I. Joes and I had like Disney toys and wind-ups. And he's like, oh my God, what are you doing with all of these toys? And he thought it was started making fun of me and everything else and thought it was the weirdest thing ever, right? Little did he know that I was like killing it selling toys and advertising my toys in the back of specialty magazines for collectors. Sometimes we have to be comfortable with who we are, right? At that point, I was still a young man and then wasn't totally comfortable with sharing that with him. Here is someone that's my cousin that was in the streets, that was making money other ways. He's no longer with us. That ended up, taking his life. But I could have been open enough to invite him on to something else that I was doing and that was very beneficial and that could have changed his life. But I was not comfortable with who I was and what I was doing at that time, even though it was doing really well for me. So being okay with who you are is big, and listening to who you're being called to be is big. And, I think it was, I forget who talks about this, but Sidney Poitier, I think it was. He says, as we go through life, we come into contact with people and it's similar to taking a walk with them. And oftentimes when there's two individuals that are taking a walk, either that person's going to adjust to your pace or you can adjust to their pace. And sometimes when you're doing good things in life, you can be strong enough mentally to continue with being okay with who you are, and you have that individual come over to your pace. Or you could do what I did when I was young man at that time, and I was like, man, we stole these toys, because I thought that that's what would make me seem cool. I know some girl who gave us the hookup at Toys R Us.
Yeah.
So I adapted to his pace. And I think if I would have done the other thing, he would have came over because he was a brilliant guy. But he used his brilliancy in another way, right? Which ended up causing him to lose his life at a very, very young age. He ended up getting shot and killed in front of his mom at that. So that's always been a reminder to me that sometimes you only get one chance to be you and also to persuade people to be them. And that, at that point, I started to take entrepreneurship very serious because I knew that there was other lives, namely mine and my immediate family, that I could change and change forever.
For you, it was, I need to do this thing and I need to do it hard because our lives are going to change on the other side of it. But it's not just my life. It's all the people I care about and all the people I love. Did you ever say to yourself, because I don't know how it was for you, but did you have a goal of $1 million? Did you have a goal of a lifestyle? What was your first want? Your first one? Your first goal?
Yeah, so my first want was to, listen, a $200 car repair used to be like a major crisis for me. So that was it. I just wanted to be able to, if my car broke down, not have to take the freaking bus for 2 or 3 weeks until I can save up enough money to get it fixed. It was just, and I think about it now and we're joking about it, but I mean, there's a lot of people that are in that position right now. There's a lot of people that live very tough lives by the standards of others. And it's something that we can't take for granted. It's something that I think you should also embrace it, especially if you know that you're going to be at a different place. Now, while you're in that moment, it's hard to say, yeah, you're right, Ty. Yeah, my air conditioning fan just went out. You want me to embrace this? It's 95 degrees outside, right?
But I think what you're saying is pretty black and white, and
Yeah.
it's so true. It's
Mm-hmm.
like embrace where you are, but we joke about it because sometimes these are the things that people don't want to talk about as they climb the ladder. They make it seem as if everybody picks up, and yes, and it's easy, and you're crazy for not being there. But the other side of it is that you embrace the fact that you had a choice and that you were willing to walk into the willingness to find the choice. Because there are a lot of people, I meet a lot of people in person because of our live events, and, I speak, and they'll come up to me or they'll be near me, and it's like, I want X to happen. And then the question is, okay, great. So you need more money. I hear you. How many people have you asked for money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just how many people have you asked? And sometimes I hear the painstaking number, 0. I haven't asked anybody in 30 days. Well, if you haven't asked anybody to buy your product or service in 30 days, then how could you have more money? I just don't understand the equation, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's this gap in which, and this is what I want to find out from you, because there are some people who feel like, but I'm too afraid to ask. I don't know how to ask. I don't know how to get started. Let me say this before Ty continues. Every single person has something that someone will pay for.
Yes.
Every single person has a knowledge, a skill, an ability that somebody else will pay for. I personally don't believe that everyone should focus on building a 7-figure business. I don't feel like everyone should be focused. I don't. I do believe that everybody should be focused on getting above 6 figures in their income. And it's like, if you run a business, 6 figures for me allows you to pay for your business expenses, pay for your rent or your mortgage, and then have enough money to eat out with your family once a month, twice a month, be able to pay for a tire blowing and things like that. It's like, what I think those people don't realize is how much power they actually have just themselves. And so they spend their time waiting for the situation to change, waiting for the government to tell them something to do, waiting for the other women to say something, waiting for the other people in the church, waiting for the other people who are this culture, or in this family. And, one of the greatest things I think I've adopted is no one's coming to save me. No one's coming to save you. So give me an idea for, how did you get over that fact? Like, what was the actual thing you put in place when you said, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta do something, and then actually doing it? Did you mantra yourself? If there was no one else around, how did you actually psych yourself up to take the first step?
So me and my mom had this very tight relationship, right? Amazingly tight. And my mom had 8 kids, right? She lost 3 of her kids. So 8 kids, and then she brought on 2 of my nephews and then my niece as well. So if you think about that, that's a lot of kids in the house. We had I'm sounding like a father now, but we had like this 2 or 3 bedroom. We had a 3-bedroom house, right? So 3 bedrooms on the 2nd floor. And I felt like because of the time that she put into me, right? I always, to this day, I have no idea how she was able to sit with me in the hospital. Like, we lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Yale New Haven Hospital was in New Haven, Connecticut, 20, 30 minutes away. How did she find the time to be with me, sometimes days on end, weeks on end, right? And still take care of the family and make sure that all the other kids, I have a brother that's younger than me, and then brothers and sisters that are older than me. So how did she find the time to be able to, take me to the hospital, sit with me in the emergency room for 4, 5, 6 hours sometimes, or, take the kids to school and then come back while they were in school and be with me? So I felt like I had this duty to pay her back. So that was my number one driving force there. It wasn't really about me. Yes, I like things. I'm not going to say that I wanted to. I was never into clothes and stuff like that too much, to be honest with you. But I like cars, right? But my biggest thing was making sure that I have something that you can attach your reason to, something that's going to drive you,
An emotional attachment.
Yeah, absolutely. The emotions are big. And listen, you can't just say, I'm excited. I'm glad you said that, because you can't just say that I want to do this. I want to do this. It has to be, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So you have to have emotion behind it, because there's something about the emotion being in there that's going to fuel you and drive you even more so. You know, I liken it to the mom who has a kid that gets stuck underneath a car, right? She'll find that superpower within her to be able to lift that car up, you know, to be able to get her kid from underneath that somehow, some way. She's not thinking about, how do I plan this out? What are the 3 steps I need? Let me go watch a video. Let me go listen to a podcast. Let me, you know, write out my business. She is going to say, I'm going to get this done. I have no clue how it's going to happen, and it happens. So take that.
So in this, you know, Ty, you highlight something really similar and clear. A lot of times I hear people teach, let's focus on what you want. But I have found in my course of dollars, cents, and all things in between, a what doesn't really get you far. It's an emotional why. As a what, like I want $100,000. I want to be on the beach. I want to whatever it might be. But I'm sure, like you imagine the moment of your mom. ... Like for me, I imagined my little girl's Jada, me handing her a very expensive toy that she wanted.
You see that?
And it was like, in my mind, to get to that's how I got to 6 figures, my first 6 figures. It's like, I could have said, I'm doing it for my kids. I want to make a certain amount of money, but I literally visualized me handing it to her, and the excitement and the emotion, because we had gone without for so long, that I needed the emotional component in order for me to be willing to get up and do all the stuff I didn't want to do, to be willing to get up and do it again when I got it wrong, or I had a bad day, or things didn't go my way. And it was that emotional connection that gave me the focus, so that it was like, it actually doesn't matter what the hell happens during this time. Like, I can give 2 flying flips.
Or how tired you are.
How tired I am, man. You know, in the last episode when you talked about, I had an appreciation for when you said, listen, I'm not telling everybody health-wise to, you know, stay up all the time, but you talked about going to school, getting home at 11, or your shift ends at 11.
The shift, yeah. Working at Morgan's.
His work shift ends at 11. He gets home, he takes a shower, he gets something to eat, and then it's 1:30 in the morning, but he still needs to study the material. He needs to do what he said he was going to do. Yeah. And then he's up until 3, 4 in the morning. Your head is falling. You're tired, blah, 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 blah. And no one else can see it, but you can see it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, without the why of what am I doing, then it's like, that becomes the fuel, the energy. It becomes the injection of keep going. It becomes the don't matter what other people are not. It becomes the blocks for all your haters and all the naysayers around you, even your family members. Because I can remember lots of times. I'm sure you
not even go there, because I got a collection of them.
I bet you family members were like, what are you doing? You're crazy, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, do you remember the point where you got to a moment where those same people who were saying you're crazy, they were like, so I need some help, or what do you, and you know, for me, my first level of this is what I did it for. Was there something true to you that you kept this physically around you to keep you focused?
That I kept physically around me?
Yeah, during the time, because I kept things physically around me in the beginning, and I still do it today.
At that time, no, I didn't know that. I didn't have that level of understanding. But you know, you did say something. You said something like having this attachment, right? You talked about your daughter and you seeing yourself giving her this toy, right? I think that there's a lot of people who they understand that they have to have a why or something that's going to drive them. And as you were saying that, it reminded me of, to this day, still having that type of drive. Now, my mom has passed and gone, right? So that was my initial drive there. But it becomes a habit now. So once you learn to put in the work, it becomes a habit. Like once you learn to become productive, it starts to become a habit and it becomes very fulfilling, right? You actually feel good producing things. You actually feel good in not giving up. I had an issue just last night. And as an entrepreneur, you're always going to have different issues, right? So if someone tells you that it's easy, they're lying. There's always going to be something. Yesterday, it was something. It was, I forget what it was. We were having a web hosting issue. And anyway, long story short, I said, I'm going to figure this thing out. So I'm on with support. And I was actually on with them until like 10 o'clock at night. I'm figuring this thing out. And I'm thinking like, this is not going to defeat me. I'm going to figure it out. Now, mind you, I had gotten up super early that day. So, you're
done.
I had the devil on this shoulder and the angel on this shoulder. The devil's like, listen, figure it out tomorrow. Go upstairs. You're good. The angel's like, are you seriously going to let this problem defeat you? Like, really? So I had to pluck the devil out, take the angel, put him on my desk, and I'm like, let's roll. And we figured it out. And so those types of things become habit. Right? Your discipline becomes habit. The individual that you grow into becomes habit, becomes part of your identity, just like all of our other identities that we start to take on. But if you do it and you stick with it long enough, even if you have no idea what you're doing, which is when it's the most important, I think. I think it's the most important that you put in the time and the effort and you stay focused, even when you have no clue how to do it or how you're going to do it. That's when you start to shape yourself.
So let me ask you this. Let me get right into numbers, dollars, and your businesses. So what was the first one, or what is the one that you said, okay, great, I'm going to drive this into the ground kind of a thing until I do figure this thing out, until I get the goal? And what was the goal? Did you say, I got to make $1 million? Did you say, I need to, like, what was the goal and how did you get there?
For me, it was being debt free, right? It was like, what I'm talking about this is, I'm talking about not having a car payment, not having a credit card payment, and only having my rent at the time, because I was renting, right, at the time. So just having that and not having all of these other things. Because I started to see where people started to like have these different debts that were coming on board with them, and how it kind of got to a point where it kind of dictated and controlled their life, right? So I wanted to be in a position where I didn't have debt, and everything that I needed or wanted, I was able to pay for in cash. And I did some stupid things where I bought like, $40,000, $50,000 cars in cash, which I would kind of regret doing now. I would have definitely a lease on that now. But so that was it. So I had to get that and get it out of my system, right? So sometimes you do things to get it out of your system. And then you have the next things after that. So now it's and it changes, right? So with my mom first, getting her out of that place, right? Like meaning the environment that we grew up in. And then it was like not having debt. And then it was buying my mom a house and paying cash for it and being able to have my children give her the keys to it. This very prideful woman who I've never seen cry in my life. And she kind of did the Denzel Washington thing when they gave her the keys, Denzel Washington and Glory, and cried out like one little eye. And I'm like, man, I got you. I got it on video. Right. So that for me, like I was more excited about buying her damn house than I was about buying my house. And I was like, hold on, that's not. But even like now talking about it, like it's just a really cool space. So that's one of the things that drove me, and knowing that you could do it, right? Knowing that regardless of where you come from, knowing that regardless of the circumstances and the obstacles and all the other crazy stuff that you might get hit with, if you really sat down and truly tried, you can do it. Now, I'm not talking about just working hard. Because we know farmers, my dad was my dad worked harder than anyone I know. He was a construction worker. That was his primary job for 9-10 hours a day. And then he would go in and work a secondary job as a security guard and as a taxi driver. And he ended up getting robbed and shot. Kids tried to rob, and he ended up passing, So working hard alone is not going to cut it. I worked my butt off at Walking's Pharmacy. It's not until I learned how to work smart and couple that with hardness, hardworking, that started to change things.
So tell me and right now in today's world, what's the business that everybody should start? Or what's the revenue?
Yes.
Like what's the thing that everybody should stop, take a deep breath and go, do this first. You should have this in place. So this is for the person who's either just starting or for the person who's already making some money,
yep.
but they need to add some more dollars, or they're like, I want to do something new.
Yep. That's an awesome question. So now we were talking about what were our whys, right? So at first it was, living a little bit better and all of this other stuff. So now the why morphs into having freedom. So not just financial freedom, because we know a lot of people that make great money, but then they've got the amazing car outside, or they have the boat, or they have the beach house, but they don't get a chance to enjoy it. So for me, it became being able to work only when I want to work, right? So the freedom of time. Like I remember the moment sitting down and writing this out. Like I was doing about $400,000, $300,000 to $400,000 a month when I got to this point in my life a couple of years back. And I was just like, my daughter came into my office and she was like, and she didn't mean anything, right? No malice about it. So she was leaving for school one morning and she would have to go to her bus stop pretty early. It was like 6:30 or so, 7:00. And then after school, her routine was going to like dance practice and some other stuff. So she wouldn't get home until like 5:00, right? 6:00 sometimes. So I remember one day she comes by my office and she's like, Dad, you're in your office from the time that I leave to go to school until after I get home. And I had to think about that. I was like, wow. Like I never really thought about it like that. And here it is, this little girl, she was about 12, 13 years old, who noticed it. And again, not saying it in any way, right. Just observing it, something that I had not observed. So I sat there and I said, you know what? I need to change things. I need to really change my core values. And I was working with some people that were really pain in the butts at that time, right? Making a lot of money, but really pain in the butts. So I changed it to, I only want to work. I'm going to set myself up so that I only have to work when I want to work, right? Only when I want to work. So that's the freedom of having the luxury of being able to work. Now, luckily for me, I like to work, right? I'm only going to work with the people that I want to work with. This was a big one for me, all right? Because the money trade-off versus working with the people that I was working with, some affiliate partners, JV partners, was not worth it. Yeah. And then I'm only going to work on the things that I want to work on, right? So at that point, I had to really totally shift things because I was working just an insane amount of hours, working with people that were headaches, like really regretting meetings and having to like knowing that I had a meeting coming up at 2:00. It's like, oh my God, really? Like this guy. So just changing that up and moving forward to that. So now your initial question, right? Because I'm starting to go somewhere else. It was like, what business should somebody start to work on? So I had to think like, what do I do that gives me all of these things? And it was something that I was already doing, but taking it to the next level. And that is publishing digital content, right? Digital content gives you the freedom. And what do I mean by digital content? I mean specifically like books, right? So ebooks or videos like what we're doing here, or audios like what you may be listening to. This is one of my newest books with the foreword by Les Brown here, a motivational speaker. And being able to create intellectual property that gives you the option of having that freedom of time that you need, right? Because once you put a digital book out there, you put digital content out there and you market it, it sells over and over and over and over again. You can reach tons of people without having to do it one-to-one. And this is what I teach my children as well, right? I've taught this to hundreds of thousands of people across the planet, hundreds of thousands of individuals from stage, from webinars, doing interviews like this. And my children, my daughter Summer, who is now 13, my son Tyler, who just turned 16, they have their own digital content publishing businesses because I want them to understand the difference between leverage. Remember, we talked about working hard and working smart and tying those together. So being able to leverage, right? They have books that, listen, my son publishes books around romance, and he is a football player. He's 16 years old. He's this big, beefy guy. He had pulled up a little bit a while ago. I wish you could see him. He does not care about reading romance novels. His friends, his fellow football teammates, they have no idea that he publishes romance novels. But he's making like $3,500 a month doing so at 16. You know? So he's understanding the power of leverage and outsourcing, right? For things that he's not good at, doesn't have a desire to be good at, and using someone else's, and I don't mean it in that sense using, but getting someone else on board that knows how to write, that knows how to go in and do the research, that knows how to craft a great high quality ebook that he can now sell on Amazon or on his own website or wherever he wants. So much different than what we learned when we were teenagers, right? So
much different. So I think the key is, my greatest takeaway right now is just even beginning to think about the fact that there is content out there, our intellectual property, whether we have it ourselves or get someone else to create it for us. We literally 100% can get other people to create content for us, and then we sell it. It's leveraged income. It's where you create something once-ish, and then you sell it over and over again. And whether it's a physical book, an audio book, or a course, or just some type of not you and
a training, anything. You know, I like to call it digital real estate, right? Because we invest in real estate too. And having physical real estate or property is so much different than having digital real estate, where I started to rethink. I'm like, you know what? My goal was to have 2,000 properties, and there's a lot that goes along with that, right? Number one, the capital.
For sure.
And then management, right? And then you've got liability issues because now you have all of these tenants that are in your properties and things like that. With digital real estate, I make it available on the web. I do some marketing, and that is pretty much it. Now let's look at the two, right? Let's say if you're looking to invest in a house and it's about $150, $150,000. I wish we could buy houses at $150, but maybe not. $150,000, right? You got to put, and you want to use this as another way of generating income. You're thinking, I'm working, I've got my 9 to 5. Let me go in and invest in real estate. Oh, there's a property, $150,000. I got to put 20% down. That's $30,000, right?
Right.
Now that property, depending on the neighborhood that it's in, you could probably rent it out for what? What would you say? Maybe what? What do you think?
Well, it depends on where you live. In Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, you're in LA, so we're not going to even count LA. So we're going to say you can rent that out for anywhere like $800 to maybe $1,500.
Oh, yeah.
Right, depending on where it's at. So now you've got a mortgage on that property, right? So now you got to subtract your mortgage. You have taxes. You got to subtract that from what you're getting paid by your renters. You have insurance. You got to subtract that. You have the occasional emergency that comes up. A water tank might bust, something, right? They might put a hole in the wall, which is something that really does happen. You got to change out the rugs. And now you've got even more money coming out of a mortgage, right? And then you have the headaches of possibly getting a call at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. You publish digital real estate, and I've got a way of teaching you how to do this where you can get content created for as little as $150 to $200, right? But books generate you a couple $100 a month. Same as what you would make with a property. It is now your IP. It's your digital intellectual property. I have books that have been selling for the last 12, 13 years consistently, but that I regularly get royalty payments on, right? Because they are still out there. They're in the marketplace. You upload it one time and people can buy it over and over. You can sell it to as many people on a planet as you wish, right? As many people as you can get it in front of. That piece of property that you bought for $150,000, you only can put one right there. That's it. And you're limited to that one additional income that's coming in a month. With this, I tell people, listen, And this is a conversation that I have with all of my students, with my 12, including my 12-year-old, my 16-year-old. I treat them like my adult students. Listen, don't take the money that you're making from the one book that you've published and blow it. Reinvest some of it back into your business. So now you have 2, 3, you've got 10, you've got 20 books on different subjects and different genres. You got a book that pays for your car payment. You've got another book that pays for part of your rent or your mortgage. You've got another payment or book that goes into your retirement fund. You've got a book that goes into your college fund, right? You've got a book that does, that gives you money that you can kind of blow if you want, right? There's nothing wrong with if you have everything else in place. It's cool to have a couple of $100 that you can just blow, and it becomes a fun game. Wow. This book made me $400 a month now, and I have to set it up so that you have to spend that money that one book makes. And it becomes a really interesting, fun, crazy to those that are looking on the outside game. Like when you tell your friends, I got this $400 and I just have to spend it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. No, I'm with it. I'm super with it. I love this. This is fantastic. I mean, the truth of the matter is that I wish there are so many things that you've just said. I wish I understood those principles early on in my business game.
Same
just
here.
leverage income, because for sure it was forever and a day where I focus on active income, right? Yeah. Which means you're constantly in some capacity at all price points. And this right here is priceless, because the truth of the matter, like you've even taught me how important it is. I think that I started to do differently in my business just from the repetition of real estate online, right? Like, it's like interns open 24 hours a day. And I love the analogy you just gave, because if I have an asset or a property and I can only have one person there at a time, which means no matter what, there is a max, there's a roof. And the reality of leverage income is, in theory, there is kind of no roof. There's no roof. We've created it once. We've had the cost of it once, respectively, and we can sell it. It can be used and distributed over and over again.
Yeah, I want to show you something really quickly. I just thought about something. I've got a couple of students here that are really crushing it. Now, it's okay for me to do good, right? I should, because I'm the teacher of it, right? If I'm teaching something and I'm not doing well with it, then that's not something you're going to be part of. Here's one of my students, and he just sent me this. I don't know if you can see the date. This is Brian, and he is at $18,000 a month.
$18,704.06. Yes.
Right. So that's Brian. This is another one of our students. Now he's at $103, right?
Okay, 103. Yes.
There's a lot that you can do with that, right? Here's another one of our guys who's at $21,000 a month.
$21,000 for the month. Yes.
So yeah, and then we've got students who just came in. Here's one at $56 and $14. These are the points. Like, these are more memorable than anything, and it continues to go on and go on and go on. Here's another one, Nate. This guy's at $15,000.
$15,073. Yes.
Any of your viewers or listeners that are watching this, I want to invite them into our Facebook group, because it's eye-opening. There's so many people that have been stay-at-home moms, or that have been people that have been involved with the corporate sector of life, right? And they've given, their job the last 10, 20, 30 years of their life, and they had no clue that this existed, and now they come into this community, to this world, and it's totally eye-opening to them. And just to hear that I don't have to write the content if you don't want to. Now, we have a lot of people that are writers that have stories in them, and that's even, better if that's the case, right? We have a lot of people that come in and they say, I've got the story, and you guys have helped me to get it out of my head. I've had it in my head for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You guys actually helped me to get it out and into a book format. And what's even better is people are actually paying for my crazy, ridiculous story that I thought would only sit in my head forever. So it's a very different way of doing things. And it's cool to see people come in. One of the guys here, I showed you, Seth. This guy is a young guy. And he is probably about 27 or so. And just to see him talk about being able to make $21,000 a month, I could see where it's changed not only him, but his family.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like that for me is really cool. It's really cool to see that.
change anybody's family. $10,000 will change anybody's family.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, Ty, you brought it. I could not be more grateful and more excited, honestly, because you've walked into one of the most overlooked areas, which is what can I do right now? With the world shifting and changing as we know it, online real estate is kind of where the party's at, period.
Yeah.
And there's no exception to that.
And it has been for a while. To be honest with you, a lot of people have just been missing out on it. Like if you think that Amazon has been around for 20-something years, can you imagine that? Like 20-something years, Amazon.
I feel like you're joking right now, but I guess you're right. Yeah. I sold on Amazon my first time like 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been something that's been around for a long time, for decades now. You look at companies like Netflix that sell digital property, right? You look at just a ton of other companies that are out there that sell digital content. And I think it's become even easier now to start a business that gives you the freedom financially and of time than it ever has been, especially post-COVID, right? Or during COVID, because everyone's now used to, and we've been forced to do this, but used to becoming more digital, right? To becoming more used to consuming online or through our mobile devices. And this will continue to make a lot of people rich, very rich.
So as we wrap up and we come to an end here on Tell Your Mother Flipping Story, I got to ask you, like, one sentence, one thought, one last kind of thought for the person who's like, can I really? Is it possible? Should I jump? Should I?
The biggest thing is to recognize when you're being cynical or pessimistic, because neither one of those will do you any good, right? And the reason why I say that is because I see people that will comment sometimes on my post or on my ads with the most cynical, pessimistic things ever, like, oh yeah, you can do it, it's easy, or you're not telling the truth, or, I mean, so many things that we make up in our head. And I actually wish I was able to really like reach out to them and show them, like, man, if you knew my story from like A to B, because I think that I've got so much more to do. So I'm not going to say Z because then I don't want to put a limit on where I'm at. So A to maybe B, you would say, wow, if this guy can do it, I definitely can do it. Right. So recognize when you're being cynical, when you're being pessimistic, when you're kind of being a little bit in denial.
I love that. When you're being cynical or pessimistic, you heard it, because it's like you got to check yourself. Because what if that person would say, hey, what if it is possible? Maybe I can do it. I love it. Being cynical or pessimistic. Well, there you have it. Ty Cohen has done the damn thing all over again. Yes, and more yes. Ty, thank you. I cannot thank you enough. For those of you who are listening, for sure, you want to make sure you go through the show notes. Absolutely. We're going to have a link so that you can find out more about what is Kindle cash flowing and what is happening over there. And is it really possible to create leverage income? The answer is yes. Number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that you can find out more about Ty in general, because Ty is Dope City, USA. And not only is he a friend, he's someone who I respect and I learn from all the time. And trust me when I say success leaves clues. And more importantly, I want you to ask yourself this moment. I want you to ask yourself, where am I doing the damn thing and where am I not? Where am I doing the damn thing and where am I not? And am I still trapped by my story? Because at the end of the day, life is too damn short for us and for you to not live the life that I know that you were meant to live. Period.
So true. So very true. Hey, Tiff, just in closing, I want to give everyone that's listening or watching a free copy of my new book, Kindle Publishing Secrets. The foreword of this book has been written by Les Brown. So I'm pretty sure that most of your listeners, your viewers are familiar with Les Brown. What I did here was I took the last decade of me publishing digital content, digital real estate, and I kind of distilled down the things that were the best and that have made my journey easier and have made me the most amount of money as it relates to digital content. And I put it in this book. Yes. And then I didn't stop there, but I also interviewed a lot of my students that are highly successful with this same type of system. And I said, okay, well, let me take their core principles and put them in the book as well. And then I took my coaches. I've got two really brilliant guys that I mentor, Marty and Josh. And I said, you know what? I want to interview you guys and give me some of your best tips and your best strategies. And I took those and I put them in the book as well. So you're going to get all of this. It's a step-by-step system. If you go to kindlecashflow.com/Tiffany. So kindlecashflow.com/TIFFANY. And you'll get a free copy of this. And I've got some other bonuses there as well. There's a video that takes you through the entire 3-step process of how you can get started with Kindle publishing. Even if you are that person who may not be technical, even if you're that mom who's put everything into her family over the last 10, 20, 30 years, and now you want to do you, like you want to release your story or you want to create your own income, this is the way that you can do it. You might be the senior who's older in age now and you just want to do something different, right? You want to travel more. You want to have more security besides relying on Social Security, right? Which may not be so secure after all, as we're finding out. Even if you're someone who just wants to put together a $400 or $500 a month plan to just blow it, that is cool. All right. So go over to kindlecashflow.com/Tiffany. You'll get a free copy of a book and you'll get a chance to watch my free video where I give you the exact 3-step process that you can use and that literally tens of thousands of my students have used to really create their first book and their first piece of digital real estate. So that's it.
Stay tuned. So I'll tell you what. This is not one of those things you should walk and do. You should run. You should absolutely run. You will thank me later. Let me know how it goes. I can't wait to see your comments. Ty, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Man, have I told you how glad I am that you're here? Like, real talk. Have I flippin' told you how glad I am that you are here? You have listened. This is the part of the show where I say, let's go find us, go follow us, go stalk us. But just make sure that we're connected. Head to dothedamnthing.tv, dothedamnthing.life, or just go hang out on tiffanylargy.com. If we are not friends on Facebook, if you have not liked our Instagram page, go do that because you're going to want to see what we're doing, how we're doing, and how we're doing the damn thing daily.